Yeah, so I'll just get started just now, and then if people start trickling in, I can kind of repeat and touch base on that again. So hi everyone, welcome to what is the last CodeBase on the couch of 2020. I can't believe we made it to the end of what has been a very, very challenging year, I can imagine, for everyone. So thanks for sticking with us, and thanks for, if you're a regular attendee, thanks so much for joining us and making CodeBase on the Couch 2020 what it is. So this is a special CodeBase on the Couch. It's CodeBase Stirling support for local tourism and Visit Scotland. So today we're going to be touching on hospitality and hotel technology. So if you're not familiar, CodeBase, we're a tech cluster based in the UK, helping startups from all across the country. And so this webinar series was kind of a response of the pandemic, what's happened, kind of trying to keep the community connected and engaged. And I think we've done that. We've covered a very wide variety of topics. So if you've missed any of those, you can always catch them on our YouTube. So we've got some really exciting plans for 2021. So hopefully you'll stick around for that. Joining us today, we've got Julie from Criton, and we're very, very excited to hear about the company, what you kind of like, your reaction to the pandemic. And so what I'll do is I'll pass you over to Julie. But before that, remember, if you have any questions for Julie at the end of the session, make sure that you use the Q&A at the bottom. We'll get onto them at the end. If you have any questions whilst Julie's going through the presentation, feel free to add them as well, and we'll get to them at the end. So yeah, I'll pass you over to Julie.
Okay, can you see my presentation now, Vanessa?
Yes, I can.
Brilliant. All right. So thanks very much for having me. It's great to be here, although I'm not on the couch. I eventually got myself a standing desk because, in my utility room. That's also why I have my branded background, because the background of my utility room is not quite professional enough. Although, it is what it is. I've been here for a long time. So for those of you that don't know, Criton is a guest engagement integrations platform, and we were set up to help the independent hotelier, hotel operator, group operator, service department operator be able to compete with the big chains around about the guest engagement technology. And Criton is a technology agnostic platform to let hoteliers offer their guests a choice of how they interact. And because their guests do interact, it helps them to increase their revenue. And we want to be the leading aggregator of guest-facing technology in the world. And that vision is about helping our hoteliers be able to choose the technology that they want to put in front of their guests. But if you're a guest and you're sent multiple interfaces and the way that you can interact with the hotel, then you don't interact. So we help make it easy for guests to interact. But of course, we work in the hospitality sector. And, I was thinking back, in January, when all the news came out about the COVID-19, the impact in China and the shutdown in Wuhan and all that sort of thing, we made some redundancies. And the reason for that was I thought it would have an impact on our sales cycle, because I thought it was going to be like SARS, and that would have meant Chinese visitors would have stopped traveling, which would have had an impact on the success of hotels all over the world. Chinese tourism is enormous for the world right now. And so we thought, right, well, we have to extend our runway. We made some redundancies, battened down the hatches, sort of looked at our costs, and we thought, well, we'll work through this and we'll be okay. But then you'll remember it started to become, the word pandemic became something that, realistically in my lifetime, we've never really heard before. And all of a sudden you start to think, well, what does that actually mean? And I think everyone will agree that the representative body for hospitality has been fantastic in the circumstances, because hospitality is at the forefront of the the industries that have been impacted. But no wonder. I mean, hospitality is the 4th biggest employer in the UK. It's got 3.2 million jobs directly employed and another just short of 3 million indirectly. It generates 4% of the UK's GDP. So that's around about £1 billion. And globally, it's over 10% of the global GDP, and that's around about $9 trillion. So basically, it's enormous. And Q2 this year, when we went into full lockdown, 30 billion of lost revenue just in Q2, sales collapsed by 87%. And I've got some statistics for you just around about the impact. So the contraction in GDP in hospitality compared to the rest of the economy, 31% versus just 9.5%. So you can see that although it's obviously impacted the whole economy, hospitality has been massively impacted. And then you've got this, now what is that statistic about? I can't remember now. 40% versus 10.7%. I'll come back to that. Oh, there we are. So yeah, furlough. Furlough. 40% of hospitality people are furloughed versus on average for the rest of the economy just short of 11%. And you got 24% of the just accommodation food services are on furlough leave. And sorry, that's my dog knocking out my power, but we'll be fine. I've fully charged. We've got the World Tourism Organization saying that global international tourism is going to fall by 70% in 2020. And then Visit Britain's internal forecast suggested that international visits to Scotland were going to decline by 78% compared to 2019. That's 775,000 less people coming to Scotland, and that's £388 million. So, I mean, just a massive, massive impact. And, ultimately, the ongoing impact of it means that the challenges that hospitality face are really like no other sector right now. And to put that into some sort of how has that happened? Well, business travel stopped completely. MICE's meetings, incentive, conferencing and events, that stopped completely. Weddings are hardly going ahead. Now, on the bright side, we had staycation, and in that quarter 3, we were able to do to have some people staying with us. We did see rural hotels, so that would be your resorts who are out of the city centre, forest or beach. They performed very well. City centre, absolutely dead. So to put that into context, August in Edinburgh generally runs 100% occupied. Literally every hotel in Edinburgh is full. And you got a really, really high daily rate, right? Everybody complains about it. The locals complain about it. The festival brings the same as the Commonwealth Games every year into Edinburgh. Edinburgh was the highest occupied city in Europe in August. It was 60% occupied. And I think they were sitting about a third of their normal average daily rate. So all this is happening, hotels are shut, but they were obviously thinking, how do we reopen when it comes to it? And how can we actually manage that reopening safely? And also concerned about the fact that if they were a business hotel, is business travel ever going to recover? So they're starting to look more at leisure. And you've got STR and PwC saying it's going to take 4 years to recover. So there's a huge amount of turmoil, not expecting things to be exactly the same and looking at how they can respond. And then, sorry, my dog's making noises. And then there's how we responded. So I think, like everyone, I was in London on I think it was 11th of March. And it was the day that Boris was going to make an announcement, and we all thought we were going to be locked down. I was supposed to be going to dinner that night. Pretty much everyone on our table cancelled. And I just said to my sales director, we're just going home. He's going to lock us down. It's going to be a disaster getting home. We'll go home. And actually it took another 10 days, I think, before we were locked down. And I think the first couple of days of lockdown were just, we have a guest engagement platform. Hotels don't have guests. What does that actually mean? And then we sort of lifted our head and we went, well, what can we do to help? And I'm not going to go over this in detail, but I just wanted to show you the mind map where we came up with our coronavirus strategy. It's quite detailed. But the pillars of that strategy were based around about how do we maintain our customer base? Can we continue to grow our user base if we're not going to be able to charge people? How are we going to be in a position to increase our MRR when market rebounds? How can we continue product development? How can we minimize cash burn, of course, and how do we support the team? And that was all about us getting to the point where we would go for a fundraise, and we were planning to raise sort of Q3 of this year. So the sort of overarching tactics for that were what we called our blue strategy. And there's another mind map for you. You can see how my mind works. Well, sometimes. So what we did was we added another package to our offering, and we gave it away free on an extended free trial to the industry. So basically we went out and said, you can have an app. It'll allow you to offer a contactless guest journey when you reopen, and that will allow it to be safe, but it'll also get you to the point where you're in that digital journey, because most of them were talking to us about, well, you know, a digital guest book is fine, but actually we want to do so much more than that. So we had a clear upsell proposition and strategy around about that. And our plan was to get to the point where of everyone who signed up, we would get 40% of them to move to the next package, and that would allow us to show growth in ARPA. So back to the, you know, can we be in a strong position to rebound when the sector recovers? And we were, I mean, when we went out to market, we didn't spend a bean on advertising. We did a press release and we got loads and loads of coverage of it. And it was about, you know, being able to support the sector that way. But all of a sudden, we tripled the number of locations we worked with and 2.5 times our customers. So we got to 400 locations and 16,000 rooms signed up with us. And then, of course, the government across the UK and in Europe decided they would all open at the same time. And we were absolutely smashed out of the park. And I think one of our biggest learnings was compressing the amount of time it took us to get each app out of the door and really looking at that as a process and making it better. And we did a pound of work on our onboarding. And, you know, I think we cut it by like 60% the amount of time it takes us to get an app out the door, because we were under so much pressure and we didn't want to let anyone down. So that was our response. We had a really busy summer. And actually it's continuing, and we're getting to the point now where these hotels should start to pay in January, and we're working with them. We have been going through a free month of push notifications to see if they would like to go to the next package. But of course, it's not easy because quite a lot of the hotels in the UK are shut or trading with much reduced occupancy because of the various travel bans and that sort of thing. But actually, from our perspective, we've learned so much. So it has allowed us to continue to grow our user base. And I'll talk in a little bit about the data that we get, but it's quite, it's been fascinating just seeing the change in customer or guest engagement in apps compared to pre-COVID, and also the hotels engagement in apps. And I'll talk a bit about that again. So hotels are an interesting beast in terms of technology. There is a lot of great guest-facing technology out there. I mean, there's literally a new guest-facing technology comes out, you know, every couple of days right now. But the point is, it's all different interfaces. And I think what we do differently is we spend a lot of time thinking about what guests would want. And because if we can get the guest to use it, then the hotel gets benefit, because once the guest is engaged with it, they can use it to upsell and, you know, give the guest a good experience, but get more revenue. So we do surveys. We generally do a survey in January, a guest survey. This year we did one in January, and then we did one in August. And there's been a bit of a change in terms of how guests perceive guest technology, but also we asked some operational questions. And, you know, what should hotels do? Well, 75% of them wanted clearly defined cleaning standards to protect against COVID-19. So that safety and cleaning has become hugely important to the guest, because they understand that contact, as little contact as possible, means safety. And then 67% of them said that they wanted the hotel to disinfect everything that people might touch in a room. Now, from a hotel's perspective, to do that, huge increase in cost. And, you know, that's fine if you're running with high levels of occupancy and high average daily rate, but right now everything's under pressure. So what can you take out of the room? What don't you need to give the guest in paper form or things that they touch? And then there was a bit around about, you know, 53% would still prefer to eat in a hotel restaurant, but the increase in room service is exponential. It's actually now over 20% based on compared to last year. 62% of customers want personalised offers based on their activities or previous purchases. And 57% are prepared to give more data to get offers. So there's a change in how guests engage with hotels, as well as how hotels want to engage with guests. And then you've got this, what about check-in and check-out? So 62% they said they would prefer to check in and out through a hotel app. 8% want to check in at a public kiosk. A public kiosk is different from a reception. How? There's nobody to help you, and still the UI in these systems is not great, let's face it. And 30% said they prefer to check in through a web page. So you're seeing, we're seeing in August that this has changed significantly. And there's a graph. Ollie and Alison will laugh because this is a Stefano graph. It's quite a big scale, but basically now, with the pandemic, 4 in 5 people will be prepared to download a hotel app in advance and use it to check in and digital key and all that sort of thing. So the industry is coming towards, the guests are coming towards the technology, and it's about how do you get the hotels to understand what guests want. And there's one of the sort of biggest trade press and analysts in the industry is called Skift, and they've done a huge amount of research on what's changing, what's working, and all that sort of stuff. And this is their graph. And basically they're saying, unsurprisingly, that online kiosk check-ins not going anywhere, and in-room technology, so tablets, you still have to touch it all, right? You know, if you can control your curtains, you're still touching stuff. And then you've got your temperature checks, track and trace, delivery robots. Nobody wants a delivery robot. By the time the food gets to you, it's cold. But you can see the fast accelerators, done well online check-in, guest messaging and workflow and staff collaboration tools, and then keyless entry and online F&B ordering, food and beverage ordering. So they're looking at it and they're saying this industry has implemented a lot of different technologies to have a contactless guest journey. What's going to stick? And I think there's something to be said for some of that. But for me, the future of hotel technology's got to be data. And I say to hoteliers all the time, you don't want data, you want insight. You want someone to translate the data to tell you what to do differently, whether that's to improve your guest experience or to make more money. And that means integrations. That means all of your systems talking to each other, and that allows you to offer that guest choice. And yet, that's the state of hotel technology and hotel information right now. You know, they've been slow to adapt. And the reason for that is the technology landscape in hospitality right now. Now, you don't need to know what the acronyms mean, but basically, these are all crucial technological solutions for the hotel industry. And quite a lot of the arrows don't go 2 ways. And if they do go 2 ways, it costs you a lot of money. So you've got this hugely fragmented technology landscape. And this doesn't include TV, it doesn't include meeting and activities software. And as I said at the beginning, you cannot get a guest to engage across multiple channels. It needs to be easy for them to find what they're looking for and to continue to engage. And the second problem is, this might go above some of your heads, but this is the hotel manager from Pretty Woman, which is quite a long time ago now. Hotel managers are all about hospitality. And, you know, hospitality is defined as the generous and friendly treatment of guests and visitors, or hospitable treatment. So this is all, they think this is all about face-to-face. They think that you have to go to reception. They've kidded themselves into believing that guests, the first line of impression is a hotel reception, which is always blinking awful if you think about it, because nobody wants to queue for very long, and nobody wants to be asked the monotonous question of, are you checking in? Well, of course, I'm standing here with a bag. You know, these questions are the same all the time. So it's a problem in terms of helping them understand that giving guests choice, guests might want to interact through their phone. That doesn't mean it's bad hospitality. And quite frankly, I spend quite a lot of time just banging on panels about how hospitality can quite easily be about guest choice. But there has been progress through the pandemic, and this is another skift graph, but you can see that the landscape is starting to move into different areas, and the integrations are starting to come together. The industry was poorly served by a few legacy vendors who hadn't invested in a product, who hadn't gone into the cloud. So this is all their technology that allows them to book and manage their guests sitting on a computer in the reception. And now that's changing. It's going on to the cloud, and the integrations are coming. It's not going to cost them a fortune. And before the pandemic, the industry was very concerned about Brexit and the impact that was going to have on their ability to retain and recruit staff. Well, the impact the pandemic's had, and we have a lot of information coming out of China, who are almost back to normal, is that things are almost back to normal, but their staffing levels are less. So they're actually running more profitably with less staff. And if you can think about, then you put technology to underpin that and drive efficiency into your business model, the impact that'll have on your bottom line is, I mean, it's easy to see that it's going to have a big difference. So from Criton's perspective, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to standardize that guest journey, make sure everything integrates, but we're about helping independents. So we want them to be able to use the technology they've got. We've just built all those integrations. And the last part of it is, because we've integrated all of that technology, it allows us to have the data. So in August, across our portfolio, we had 30,000 unique downloads. You can imagine the sort of data that we're getting, not just for the hotel, to be able to say to a hotel, here's what we think you should change, or here's how you can sell more, or, why is nobody looking at that in your app, or have you got your offers up to date, that sort of thing. But at an industry level, what does it look like in all the different hotels in the different regions? And how is that going to help the industry to respond whenever things get back to normal? Right now, we've got a lot of staycation business, a lot of domestic, so the use of mobile is significantly increasing. When we go back to having more international visitors, how do you make sure that that mobile use plays to your hands? So for me, as I said, I think the future of hotel technology has got to be that technology underpinning hospitality to allow you to provide guest choice. And that's the end.
Great. Thank you so much, Julie. That was really very insightful. And I love the stats. It's actually quite eye-opening. I guess you don't really realize it unless you actually draw down into the data. But thank you so much for that. A little virtual round of applause for that. It was just really, really interesting to kind of see that. I've been staying at hotels recently. I got married at the beginning of November, so we were frequenting a hotel. So actually it was quite interesting to base like real life, my guest experience. I would be a guest and kind of being like, oh, I wish I had this, or I never actually thought about that. So no, it was really interesting to see. But yeah, if anyone has any questions about the presentation, or if there's anything that you want to know more about, please feel free to ask away in the Q&A. We will get around to it, and hopefully we'll get some really good conversations going on. So yeah, don't be shy. I always say there's no such thing as a stupid question, and we're all here to learn, aren't we? So yeah, ask away. I thought I'd just probably kick things off with a couple of like wee notes that I made during the presentation. But do you think the reluctance of hotels moving into digital is also to do with cost? Because you hear a lot of these hotels saying, I've spent X amount of money trying to make sure we're up to COVID standard, like with all these like temperature checks and signs and things like that? Do you think they're like, well, I've just pumped all this money into physical signs and all these things for COVID, and it's just like, I don't want to spend money doing this that no one's going to care about?
I think before COVID, the reticence was definitely around about the cost of integration. So if you think about a lot of the technology being legacy and being on boxes and reception, it's expensive to make that a stable integration that can allow the technologies to work together. I think with COVID, no, I'm not, obviously their cash pots are empty right now, and they don't have a lot of leeway in terms of what they spend. But I think there's a change where all of a sudden contactless and guest journey, including digital, is now being discussed at the board level. So I think they will spend the money. I think they're really, really upset right now, the amount of money they've been asked and told to spend to make them COVID compliant, and then they've still been shut down. And, you wouldn't be surprised to hear me say this, but I just think it's a blinking nonsense, because realistically, we're going to have a huge spike of COVID after Christmas. Whereas actually, if people just went to their local hotel and had dinner, that wouldn't happen because they are COVID compliant.
Mm-hmm. Do you think kind of like hospitality in general has been kind of targeted as, the root cause of community transmission and things like that? Do you think that's kind of a bit unfair for them to kind of be that? It's kind of like an easy target in a way, like they can just easily be like, oh, we'll just shut down hospitality for X amount of weeks.
I think it is an easy target, and I think don't get me wrong, of course nightclubs had to be shut. I mean, and arguably bars where you just go and stand cheek to jowl isn't great either. But I think if you're going to sit in a restaurant or a hotel and have your dinner, or you're staying in a hotel, you're at very, very limited risk. And in fact, the statistics that have come out of UK hospitality show that it's like 1.4% of transmissions happening in hospitality versus retail. Supermarkets seem to be getting a lot of the blame. But even though the statistics are there, it's not making any difference to how governments choose down the hospitality industry. So it's a big problem. But the vaccine, of course, has given everybody hope that actually we can see some good news on the horizon. But you've got this underlying. A lot of hotels are reliant on business travel. Will business travel ever be the same as it was? Because we've now got all these people working from home. Companies have seen that they can do a lot of business on platforms like Zoom. And, will people feel comfortable going to big meetings until we know for sure that the vaccine stops transmission? Probably not. So I think, I said at the beginning, STR and PwC are saying 2025 before we get back to some sort of numbers like 2019. I have every faith that whereas business travel might change, there will be something that takes its place. Hospitality has its place in the world. It's just how it's delivered and to what sectors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. We've had a question come through from Mike. He says, thanks for the insights. I'd love to know what retention techniques or prompts you use to bring people back into the platform or back to the platform. He's added something else. He says, especially hard when people aren't traveling as much, so your numbers are really impressive.
Do you know, we've been really impressed. So our hotels can send push notifications, and they can send global push notifications, or they can target to various areas. So what you might do is you might see a hotel targeting people within 2 hours drive of the hotel, because they know that people might make a last minute decision to travel and come that, so tell them what's on. But also things like, some of our hotels have sent out recipes, they've had exercise classes. I mean, I think the personality of the hotel can really shine through. So that sort of technology allows our hotels to do that. And also they're really focused on making sure that it's up to date. But there was, now I'll get this right, it came from Oracle a couple of years ago, that hospitality apps on people's phones were generally opened once a week. That's only increasing, because I just think there's folks sort of moving around on their phone because they're bored. And if you've kept the app, the chances are you're going to have a look and see what's different, particularly when they know that the hotel's engaged and is updating the information regularly. So there's lots of different things they can do, but quite a lot of it is based around trying to get them to rebook, and of course the rebook through the app.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hopefully that's answered your question, Mike. If not, please feel free to ask another, or if you want a bit more elaboration. But no, that's really interesting, because you know, we were looking last month on offers and things of hotels, and you can add offers on top of offers these days. Like, it's not like one offer applies. So it's really interesting to kind of see the way that they're thinking of marketing, and maybe not necessarily on an app, but you know, on their website and things like that. So this is a really great opportunity for it to get that extra business
Well,
in.
a big trouble that hotels in particular face, that a lot of people don't understand, is if your booking comes via booking.com or Expedia, they lose 18 to 20% in commission. So really, if you book direct with a hotel, you're much more valuable to them. Mm-hmm. Assuming that they've got their acquisition costs sorted, because of course if you go and spend a pile of money and don't get very many bookings from it, then it's more expensive. But if you particularly repeat guests, if they can book direct on the website, it's massively more profitable for you, which is why you see all the big chains and everyone trying to get you to book direct, and the technology on the website. So that booking journey is very well understood in the sector, because it's cost them a lot of money. What happens once a guest's in stay? They don't know.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we will be solving with our data, which is very exciting.
I think as a prospective guest, or as a guest myself, I think this kind of pandemic has kind of taught me to be a bit more bargain hunting, I guess. Like, I only realized that if you book direct, you save a lot more money. Like, that was only just maybe a month ago that I realized this. And you do start feeling a bit stupid, because you know, you book through booking.com and all that, and Expedia and things like that, and yeah, you just don't realize that, you know, the hotels have to pay something towards them, and actually you're much better off paying directly, because sometimes you don't think that. You're like, oh, it's cheaper if I do it through this. But no, it's been a very a learning experience for myself as well.
Most hotels.
Alison has actually just popped through a question.
Ooh,
yeah. So Alison has just popped another question in. She says, how has it been managing a sudden increase in workload / demand while teams are working remotely? That's a really great question.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it was tough. And, you know, I think you'll remember that it was sort of that first week in July that all the hotels were reopening. And I mean, we were working ludicrous hours, you know, and we were online. But actually the tools let you feel, you know, you can see who's on Slack, you can chat to folk, you can jump on a Google Hangout. I mean, I've been super impressed by the team, I have to say, and just how they've coped. And we've done a couple of surveys through that just to find out how people are feeling about everything. And I mean, now they're at the point where they're missing this social interaction, you know, so team night out or just this sort of water cooler chat. But we've spent a lot of time just trying to do stuff which isn't work related. So have a coffee here, chat to everybody, all that sort of stuff. But I mean, I think for some stuff we miss the spark. There's definitely that spark that comes from just having a blather. But on the other hand, so much has been done. And, you know, we took on 6 co-planners to help us through that really busy time, and they were awesome as well, and, you know, integrated. And so now we're in a situation where quite a lot of our team haven't met face to face, and yet everybody feels part of the team. And we got some amazing feedback from the co-planners saying that how we had amended our induction, and, you know, we, like, man with a van took desks, monitors, chairs, everything went out. So, and, you know, Louise was on at them doing her workplace assessments and all that, just so that we knew that they were set up properly and safe and not going to come back to work all hunchbacked or the chiropractor's appointment. It's the thing is, it's not ideal, but I think there'll be a blend in the future. I mean, I think a lot of companies have understood now that it is possible for people to work efficiently at home.
I think it's really great that you've kind of still managed to maintain some form of company culture, because I have heard a lot of companies have like really struggled with that. They've never done the remote thing, or they're not very technologically focused. So yeah, it's really great to hear that, you're still kind of, you're up there. But I definitely know what you mean about the water cooler chats, like little bits here and there, because I was in the office with my colleague for the first time, and it's this is little things where you just pop your head up and you just make a comment, and you don't need a response. You just want someone to hear it and understand it, and then you can just go back to work. Whereas I don't really get that here. Like my husband just puts his headphones on and ignores me, so it's it's like I wouldn't get that from a colleague. They would have to listen to me. So yeah, I understand that you kind of lose that little bit of you kind of just miss the chat.
Yeah, but I mean, I think tools like Slack are amazing. So we've got like a positivity channel, a lockdown channel. We moved to having it's now a Wednesday morning stand up where we just have an agenda and everybody's on. You can see everybody's face. I mean, the usual couple of folk don't want to put their camera on because they look like they've been dragged through a hedge backwards. But it does just kind of keep everyone in touch. And I think we worked really hard on communicating much more frequently than we ever have done.
That's great. Yeah, I definitely feel a lot more connected with the CodeBase team. I think my favorite channel on Slack is recipes for the lockdown. So we're sharing our good and bad bakes or cooks and things like that. So that's always my favorite one. Can I get a bit of a laugh from there and some inspiration? So yeah, hopefully that's answered your question, Alison. If not, feel free to ask another one. There was actually a really interesting stat on your presentation where you were talking about 67% of people would prefer to have everything in the room disinfected. So when I was in the hotel last month, I'm going to be honest, it never crossed my mind like that I was touching, like, you know how they say the remote control is like the dirtiest thing in the room. And it just never crossed my mind. And I think part of it is I'm probably of the latter percentage. And maybe it's because I'm a bit too trusting. Like, I trust that the cleaners have done this. So yeah, it was really interesting. And then also I went to another hotel where, they had single-use paper menus and they had single-use things. And then you kind of start thinking about the environmental impact as well of these single-use items, because as soon as like you order something, they just scrumpled up the menu and just threw it away. So no, it was actually really interesting to see that stat, because I would have thought it would have been the other way around, because I was
I think it's about building trust, and also a lot of the chains immediately came out with a campaign around about safety and cleanliness, and it was all about fogging your room and hazmat suits and we're ready and all that sort of thing, which is a subliminal thing. So probably what might have happened is you might have picked up that they're working really hard on their cleanliness because they've been communicating to you that they're working really hard on their cleanliness. So you don't have to worry about it. I mean, don't get me wrong, hotels are already really clean. but it's, you can't wipe down that book every time a guest is gone. So there, and as you say, single use, it's just so bad for the environment when everybody's got their phone. Yeah,
I think I do prefer, like, everyone uses their phone like constantly anyway, so why don't you use that to your advantage, and it prevents people from touching things like that. But no, it was a very eye-opening stat for me. Have you kind of seen an effect on the tier system throughout Scotland in terms of like hospitality, obviously the travel through the tiers? Because we actually found the weekend we were staying in a hotel that a lot of people from the Central Belt came up that weekend so that they could have a wee little drink with their meal, which I don't know whether it was breaching the rules or not. I guess it did, but I think they pleaded ignorance. But yeah, have you kind of seen an effect of that just across, not even the UK, I guess Scotland?
Massive. I mean, I was very relieved when it happened in other countries, not just Scotland, the whole tying alcohol and eating together. But ultimately, if you're a hotelier, you've got a small wedding running and you're allowed to serve them alcohol, and then in your restaurant you're not allowed to serve alcohol. So people are coming, they're in their room, maybe having a pre-dinner drink. Some hoteliers are seeing people go back to their room every course to have a drink. They can't, then they're going back to a room, so you're not getting that social part of it. Room service is going up. I mean, it seems an utter nonsense to me. because hoteliers are license holders. You know, they're already aware of what is good and bad behaviour around about alcohol and looking after it. So it wouldn't be a hop, step and a drunk really to get them to make sure that people were safe. But I mean, honestly, I could go on forever about some of the quite frankly ludicrous and unnecessary things that have been put in place, which realistically have made diddly squat difference, because, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the last spike was about all the students going back to university.
Yeah, for sure. Have you seen that there's kind of been inconsistencies throughout hospitality and hotels through Scotland in terms of rules in a way? Like when we all had the, you know, the blanket rule across Scotland, did you see some hotels were kind of taking a bit of liberties, or what kind of, have you experienced that?
I mean, I touched on it. The rural hotels have done so much better than city centre, and it's almost like people think that COVID doesn't make it out of the city centre. You know, if you're on a beach or a forest, you're fine. So they've been busier. Some of them have had their best ever summer, but they had a terrible Q2 and they've had a terrible Q4. So, you know, it hasn't made up for it. I mean, I think ultimately it comes down to your financial stability. If you can afford to continue to run, you know, you take Gleneagles, Crieff Hydro, even with furlough, they were running at £500,000 cost a month when they were shut. So, you know, there's been bank financing, obviously cash that was supposed to be spent on refurbishments, that sort of thing. It's all gone.
Wow, that's
I mean,
a scary amount of money, isn't it? Like,
you know, the government has been great, and don't get me wrong, the furlough scheme is fantastic, but let's just say a city centre restaurant, your furlough, fantastic, brilliant, but you claim it in arrears, so you still got to pay your staff and then claim it back, and you still got to pay your rent. Yes, okay, they've had rates relief, but you know, you still got to pay all your utilities. You probably had fridges and freezers full of supplies, which may or may not have gone off, and you can't just open back up on a pin, you know. And are you ordering fish for this weekend or not? I mean, and then you've got the wider suppliers. So one of my friends is a fish merchant. You know, his business, poof. You know, our business impacted. It's been massive, and we haven't really had any very much different support than every other sector. That's why I think the supermarkets giving back their rates relief money is fantastic, because, well, it'd be fantastic if they used it to support hospitality, but it does show that some people took furlough and then haven't needed it, you know.
Yeah, it's a shame that's kind of happened and kind of brought a negative connotation to a positive thing. So no, yeah, you definitely kind of, the media has kind of brought that to the forefront. If we have a little bit more time, so if anyone has any last minute questions that they want to ask, we'll be wrapping up soon, but we have time for a few more. There was also something really interesting you said about people preferring to check in online on an app and things like that, because I guess you're reducing the time you're spending waiting. Kind of what's your personal preference? What's kind of your view on that?
I lose the reception. But I travel all the time, you know, so I mean, I had somebody say to me recently, so you're making people download an app for every hotel? I was like, yep. How many airline apps have you got on your phone? And of course they were a traveler, and so I've got like 15 on my phone, and you don't delete them because you're like, well, I might use it again, and then they can market to you. And it's exactly the same with hotels. I mean, apart from the fact that you're queuing for something you've probably already paid for, you know, you go there, they ask you all the same information you've given them online. They're under pressure because there's a queue, so the interaction isn't authentic. And you know, realistically, I'd much prefer to speak to someone from my phone, you know, to order stuff or ask questions, or when I'm in reception, speak to concierge, get recommendations or bookings, that sort of thing. I just think it's coming. The chains are investing in contactless, which means they're setting the trends and people will come to expect it. And quite frankly, I'll download an app to avoid a queue.
Yeah, avoid any kind of interaction from someone. I think we are definitely moving into that kind of society and that kind of way of thinking of everything just being like automatic. I get into the hotel, I check in, I think I like, is it Citizen M? I really like their kind of way of like working. I mean, you have someone there if you need it, but everything is kind of like automated. I mean, they might have to change their communal touchscreens, but no, I kind of like that kind of hybrid of people and technology. But
no, I agree. I mean, I think, as I say, the sector's been slow to adopt, and you know, I mean, there is this sort of lots of people around you means great hospitality. You know, before I had a startup, I used to make decent money and go to quite a few 5-star hotels. Now I go to 5-star hotels, but I don't stay, I just speak to them. And the whole check-in thing's awful. People taking you to your room. I don't need someone to take me to my room. I don't want you in my room. I don't want you showing me where the toilet is. I can figure that out for myself. Just let me get on with my trip, you know. So
yeah.
I think the generation that's coming up are very clear that if they can use their phone and self-serve and it's their choice, then that's great.
Yeah.
So for me, the ultimate hospitality is choice.
Yeah, that's it. Choices, like the customer's choice is king in this kind of way. But yeah, if no one has any other questions, I'm going to finish off with my last one. But what do you think your kind of future predictions are in terms of hotel technology? What do you think is going to happen, and what do you want to happen in the industry?
Obviously, every hotel should have a crack at that. No, I think we will see some evolution of it. The cloud, the main system in a hotel is a property management system, and that's what, you know, is responsible for live availability. So someone in a room or somebody not in a room so they can sell it. They are becoming more cloud-based. So that two-way integration, which allows live information to flow, it's all becoming a bit easier. And I think the you know, this new vaccine and the way it's been developed and the way they're talking, like there's going to be more COVID-19 or other COVIDs or other SARS.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that people understand that actually contactless is around to stay. And so how do you use technology to underpin the guest experience and underpin the staff's experience? So yeah, I have to say I'm optimistic for it, but we've still got a bit of a way to go, because as I say, some of the big pieces of technology are just starting to catch up around about APIs.
Yeah, and what a great challenge that will be for the years ahead. I think very exciting.
Exactly.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Julie, for the presentation and all the answers that you've given. I think, yeah, this is definitely food for thought, and something that you kind of hear about it as a consumer yourself, but it's actually really interesting to kind of see the flip side of that. But no, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to everyone for your questions and for joining us on our last webinar of the year. I'm sad that I won't get to do this every month again, but hopefully we'll come back in 2021 with some brand new content. We do still have some CodeBase events, online events, still running until the end of the year. So if you want to check that out, thisiscodebase.com/events. We'd love to hear any feedback, suggestions, or speakers that you'd like to hear from in the future. Feel free to email us at info@thisiscodebase.com. Make sure that the information gets fed to the right people. So yeah, if you just want to send us a quick comment or suggestions or what you liked and what you didn't like about the webinar series, that would be great, and we can help shape the next year for you all. But yeah, we'll just finish up here today. Another massive thank you to Julie for joining us.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. And yeah, everyone, I hope you all have a lovely afternoon and a lovely festive season, and keep safe.